Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. This is a podcast about the strange and unusual, the secret and conspiracies, the fringe and the supernatural. This is a show where we do little to no research on our topics, and we are not professionals in any field except speculation. This is the Secret Transmission Podcast. So, welcome to episode 4. We are going to be discussing the Salem Witch Trials today. I am your host, Toby. Alongside of me is these people.
The fabulous Kristen.
Evan.
And Tina.
The Salem Witch Trials happened in 1692, but there was a huge witch craze in Europe between the 15th and 17th century. Lots of people were trialed during that time period, tens of thousands apparently. Salem Witch Trials were not as severe as what happened in Europe. In fact, it was very small scale and not as many people died as before because it only lasted for a year or two. But everything started because of a man named Joseph Glanville. He is the one that started the witch hunt by saying that witches and ghosts were real. In the church, if you doubted that the spirits existed, that pretty much meant that you said that angels don't exist. If you said angels don't exist, you said God and the devil don't exist. So if you didn't believe in witches, you were pretty much cast out and considered a heretic. You would be looked down by the community if you didn't believe in those things. One of the first cases that happened before the Salem Witch Trials happened in... happened. One of the first cases that happened was in 1688 with the rumors of witches close to Salem Village and the other surrounding towns. A minister by the name of Cotton Mather was one of the guys that really pushed the rumor. I believe he was the one that wrote the book.
He's the one who started out being the person who was pushed into the town to figure out who was witch and who was not.
He was the one that was spreading the rumors that witches were casting spells on all the townfolk. The first story that happened in what'd I say, 1688?
1688.
1688. This is right before the witch trials started. A man named John Goodwin, he had a maid type person. Her name was Ann Glover or Goody Glover. I couldn't figure out which name it was. She was the housekeeper. That's what she was. She was a housekeeper. Apparently she was a big pain in the ass to the whole town. Even her husband was calling her a witch, which probably didn't help her out very much. The oldest Goodwin kid stole laundry from her one day. And I wasn't clear on this, but 4 of the 5, or maybe 6, kids started to get very sick after this, doing crazy things. The kids would complain about their neck and back pains, random loud outcries, and even having no control over their bodies, like flapping their arms like wings, trying to hurt themselves and others. They believed that Goody Glover was the one that was casting the spell on them for stealing the laundry and just trying to get revenge on the children. Glover was arrested and tried for witchcraft. On November 16, 1688, she was hung in Boston. But on the bright side, 300 years later, in 1988, the Boston City Council proclaimed November 16th as Goody Glover Day. She is the only witch trial victim to receive any kind of tribute. So that's where it really started, but all the reports say that it was 1692.
I think it's so weird. Many people died for this day, and all of a sudden, it's Goody Glover Day.
Well, but that's where it really started. I mean, they could have called it Salem Witch Hunt Day, but it really started with Goody Glover.
Yeah, I guess so.
At least 19 people were hung during all these trials. There's a lot of different trials because pretty much anyone could say, hey, my neighbor's a witch, and then you would be accused what happened a lot of the times is the children of the people in the village would start acting crazy, just like the Glover kids. Mm-hmm. And this is 1692. So this is 4 years later. The kids would start acting crazy, and they would start saying that they were seeing visions of people, like in their sleep. They would start saying, it's the crazy next door neighbor who's casting a spell on me, and that's where they would be accused from, is these teenagers. They age anywhere.
But didn't you say that they only did this in acting out because they grew up in such a tight-knitted Puritan country that they were like, we have to do something to act out because we're bored.
Yeah, that's one of the rumors is that, or one of the beliefs is that all these children were just acting out because, you know, you either work, clean, or go to church. You don't dance. It was a very religious thing, like why these people, or why these teenagers, and because it was anywhere from 12...
No footloose here.
No footloose.
We're not going to dance at this high school dance.
But it was mostly children between 12 and 20. So it does seem like a lot of this is just bored kids.
Boredom struck. Yeah, they were boredom struck. They didn't know what else to do. They were sitting at home. They were kneading bread or, you know, doing the cotton wool and doing rugs and stuff like that. And so they had no other
outlet.
Yeah, they didn't know what else to do besides, hey, we're bored, and just like any other rebellious thing, they decided to be like, we're going to turn this town upside down.
So basically they needed iPods.
Yeah, they needed iPods.
They need some Xboxes.
They needed the internet.
They needed game consoles, iPods.
Why didn't their mom just go buy them for them?
Yeah.
Jeez, y'all.
Only thing I know is that the burning of the witches was not a very cliche thing. Actually, the English people, they actually forbade for people to be burnt. They ended up, only like a couple of people were actually burnt to death before the English people decided that it was against their regulations, their rules, their law, and they were like, we're not going to do that. So everybody who's like, yeah, so-and-so was burned at the stake for being a witch, that was most likely not true because it wasn't a very big thing.
Well, see, and what I read was that even in Europe, they didn't burn people. That what they did after... The most popular ways to kill the witches, the supposed witches, is to either hang them or cut their head off. And most of the time, after the body was dead, then they would burn them.
And only thing I've ever seen about this was that the only other point of execution was that they would take the witch, strap them in a chair, and that they would sink them and bring them back up for questioning and ask them, are you a witch or are you not a witch? And then if they couldn't respond, they'd throw them back down, and
they would force a confession out of them.
Force a confession out of them, and as we saw, that they used to say that if witches floated, then they were a witch because they were choosing to float so that they wouldn't die. But if they sunk, then they were a witch.
Well, this is with that, they would actually tie giant rocks to their arms and their legs, and they would throw them in the water and say, okay, if you float back up, you're a witch, and we're going to deal with you then, and we're going to kill you.
If you don't.
But if you don't, you're...
Sorry about your luck.
Yeah.
Great, you're not a witch.
Could you imagine...
One less person to feed.
Yeah, could you imagine being that person that's like, oh, I guess they weren't a witch. Do you just carry on with your day and just... Well.
Did you also hear the other way that they would force a confession is people would be pressed to death?
Yes.
Yeah, that one was pretty crazy. There was a guy named Giles Corey who they proclaimed to be a witch because he had quite a bit of property. Back then, if you were convicted of a crime, all of your belongings were divided between the townspeople by the sheriff. So they say that someone just accused him of being a witch because once, he was convicted, they would then get all of his property. But they couldn't...
greedy.
Yeah, just a greedy town wanting all of his stuff. Whenever he wouldn't confess to being a witch, they would place heavy stones and objects on top of him to get him to confess, and when he never did, he stayed that way for about 2 days before he ended up passing because he was crushed.
Yeah, we actually saw last night where we actually had seen like a documentary before, and it was where they had stoned him to death, and the very last words out of his mouth, because you can only get a confession from a witch if they say, yes, I'm a witch, or no, I'm a witch, or anything like that. And if they don't say that they're a witch, then they can't really legitimately kill them. Mm-hmm. But he screamed more stones.
It was probably a very scary time, like when all this started. Because everyone was getting accused. These younger people are accusing people. Your neighbors are accusing people, maybe because they'll get your stuff that you have, your land. When it was all said and done, though, 19 people were hung. There was over 150 accusations, though, but 19 people were actually hung, plus the one that was pressed to death. And I read that even a few animals were, like dogs, were killed because they were familiars. I guess those are like the witch's helpers, kind of like a black cat would be. 14 of the 19 people were women, the other 5 were men. So it wasn't just women that were subject to be accused of being a witch. Like, men could be accused too. So a few of the things that the witches were accused of doing was, making people sick, making them crazy, harming animal, cattle, anything to harm your crops, anything bad, whether it was disease, famine, was blamed on the witches. Even if you were having sleeping problems, people would tell other people that witches were pinching them in their sleep to wake them up and keep them up at night.
Some of the townsmen were saying they were dreaming of some of the women in the town. Like, one man had a particular set of dreams about one of the townswomen, so he claimed she was a witch because he was having impure thoughts because of her.
The devil was making hell.
Right, yeah. Like, I'm not going to sit there and all of a sudden wake up and be like, I was pinched in the middle of that, so please hang me.
Yeah, like he obviously had a crush on this townswoman and is dreaming of her and having impure thoughts, but it's her fault because she's a witch.
Well, see, and that's what it was. Like, it wasn't like, I got pinched, so I'm a witch. It was, I was pinched by a witch, so I'm being, like, haunted almost, or being tortured by this witch. So if you were saying that, oh, I'm being pinched at night by the witch, and then you had a dream of Tina, then Tina's the witch, obviously, because you had a dream about her.
I'll get you.
Down a Puritan hell.
I'm gonna pinch the hell out of you.
It's such an evil witch, like.
Here I go. I'd die for that.
I can do anything, but I'm gonna pinch you when you're asleep.
I can turn you into a toad, but I'm just gonna pinch
my
you.
hair quotes. I'd die for that. But like they sit there and they say that like witches, when they first started looking for witches, they would look for the suckling point. Well, when we first saw that last night, I sat there and I saw that and I was thinking, they said, we would look for points of blood and we would look for points of pain. Who's to say that somebody just doesn't know that that's going to happen and they're like, I'm going to sit there and give all my might to not show any pain or anything during this process so that I don't have to be a witch. Like, and it's easy to sit there and say that if somebody was accused of being a witch because of how their actions are and the girls are all in court, all of a sudden they're all turn their heads. Well, it's more likely that you can stone one person to death or hang one person to death. But if you sit there and you come to the point of being as a group of people, it looks more destructive and more destructive, like it's evil. So all I would have to do is say, like, if Tina over here is sitting there turning her head one way, all I gotta do is go, oh, turn my head one way, and all of a sudden we're both witches, and a group of people could conspire to do this kind of stuff.
That's what they would do in court is, when a witch was being trialed is, if the girls were sitting there on the bench, they would do the same things as the supposed... Yeah, they would mimic the witch, and that's what all the people would be like, look, they're doing the same thing.
She's a witch.
But this was the other thing. I think it said something like, the witches, they would... If that's what the case was, they were doing the same thing as the witch. They would have the witch go touch them, like on the shoulder or something, and if they stopped doing it, that meant that the witch took back the evil spells that they casted on them, so therefore she was the witch. So that was one way of testing to see if that was the witch.
You could pick and choose who was a witch. All it had to take was one accusation for a whole entire trial to unload on them.
You had to also pass a witch test. And here's a big list of things that you could do to prove that someone was a witch. The witch cake. The ingredients for the witch cake were rye meal and urine from the person afflicted by the witches. So, like...
A piss cake.
It's a piss cake. So, if I believed that Kristen is afflicted by the witch, right? She's saying that she's being haunted. Well, not haunted, but she's being tormented. She's getting pinched. She's being pinched all night. So, what we would do, since she's afflicted by the witch, is we would take your urine, put it in a cake, and then we would feed it to a dog. The dog would eat it, and the witch would scream in pain. So, I don't know how that works, but Kristen pees in a cake, and then we find out that Tina's screaming over here while the dog's eating it.
I mean, yeah.
So, you're the witch.
Oh my gosh, that dog ate my friend's piss cake.
Right. If she didn't know it was going to happen and she screamed, I could see that.
The other test you could do was the spectral evidence. And that's where the accusers would see the people in their dreams. So, that's proof right there. You're in my dream, so you're a witch. The next one, it would be...
That's so sheer to sit there and say, hey, I saw somebody in my dreams. It's like, no one else is in the dreams with you. I dreamt of you, you
witch.
Yeah, I dreamt of you, Evan, so you're a witch.
You must be.
I mean,
we're going to hang you.
That's so vague.
Because I saw you in my dreams last night.
That's so vague. You can't sit there and say that about somebody.
Eyewitness testimonials. So basically, he said, she said. Evan, I saw you pinching me in my sleep.
I saw you peeing in the forest. You must be a witch.
The next one...
live off he said, she said.
The next one is the witch's teat test.
Oh my God.
So,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. The teat test.
Yes, it's cold as a witch's teat. So basically that means...
If your boobs are cold?
If your boobs are cold. No, it's like if you have a mole or some kind
say if you had like a mole or a certain spot on your body, that was considered a suckling point for like a weapon, which would be a spider, a frog, or anything like that you could sit there and a weapon that you could manipulate to be against somebody else. Like, that's where the devil comes and sucks on you. That's where, he comes and it's just there. And they would
where they
poke
got their power?
Yeah, it's where they got their power. They would poke it.
Like a troll with the diamond on its stomach?
Yes. Yeah, a troll. Yeah, they're like, poke the diamond, poke the star.
Well, that's what they would do, is they would get a needle and they would poke the wart, whatever it is, the mole, and if you didn't bleed or you didn't say ow, then that must mean you're a witch.
But I mean, God, we're all witches now, okay? Because, I
don't know how many times I've poked my moles and they didn't bleed.
If we don't go to a dermatologist, then we're definitely witches, because we all have that suckling mole that could just definitely throw us under the bus. But if they poked it, there was blood and pain, you were normal. If they poked it and there was nothing,
who decided
that? Yeah, right.
I was like, let me poke your mole.
I got this needle, and I see that you clearly
this
have a mole right there.
Yeah.
Only witches will not yell or bleed.
I think it has to do with
skin obstruction. So let's just go ahead and
maybe that's why the saying.
Pine needle.
Maybe that's why the saying is cold as a witch's teat, because maybe you're so cold. I don't know. Your blood won't flow. I don't know. Another test is the artifacts that the supposed witch had: cauldrons, books on palm reading or horoscopes, voodoo doll type things, or their broomsticks, or maybe even talking cats.
You sweep your house,
you're a witch. Even stuff hidden in walls. Stuff hidden in walls was considered something that made you a witch back then.
How many talking cats did they find?
That's what, when I read that, I was like, talking cats.
They're like,
pocus,
I found a talking cat, so that cat talked to me. She's a witch.
I'd be freaked out if a cat told me that. I'd be like,
that cat's a witch.
Yeah. Hang the cat.
Get rid of that cat. That's weird.
Did anybody else hear that?
Another test that they would do was the Lord's Prayer test. So you had to recite the whole prayer without fucking it up, basically. or you're a witch. If you
We're witches.
which was a problem. Which was a problem because a lot of these people didn't speak clear English. They couldn't read. So if you...
They're using it against them.
Yeah, how unfair is that? Like, you know...
Recite it or die.
Yeah.
You misplaced that word.
You foreigner.
Yeah. You said the wrong word. You said...
You said the, and it was and.
Yeah.
So sorry.
But they said that there was a man who was accused as a witch. He recited the poem from beginning.
It's not a poem.
to
It's
end.
the Lord's Prayer.
Well, the Lord's Prayer.
I'm just
whatever.
saying.
A poem in anybody else's area, because not everybody believes in the same God as us. But they recited the Lord's poem, or whatever you want to call it, from beginning to the end, and they still killed him.
Well,
While he was being accused as a witch and dying.
they're like, well, you got it right, but you still have that talking cat.
He had a mole that didn't bleed.
Yeah, I mean, you did recite it, but
You still
you're
have
right.
that book
The
with
cat,
the one eye.
and you have the cauldron, and, you know, there's just something weird about that.
People are dreaming of you, bro.
So, so the touch test, like I had already described, the touch test would be they would have the affected person be touched by the witch, and it would cure them, and they were obviously the witch if it cured the person of their craziness. The next one was the forced confession, dunking, pressing, or bounce submersion. So that's the one where they tied the rocks to your
tie the
arm
rocks
and drowned you. Basically, everyone drowned. So because you know they weren't.
You're either
divers.
gonna die or you're gonna die. So
Yeah. Possible causes for people to speculate that there was witches. The first one would be anti-feminism, because most of these were women that were. So it was just to keep the women's people down.
Yep.
control that population.
Control the women's. Because you women's.
They birthed the children. Now get rid of them.
Yes. So the one that we talked about already was the bored teenagers. So we've already talked about the bored teenagers. The other reasoning for possibly the craziness of the teenagers was the ergot poisoning, which was like a fungus that grows on the rye wheat because they all consumed a lot of the rye wheat. Oh, did you have that one?
That was the only thing that I had.
Let him talk about it.
Tell me about it.
Well, you
Since
basically covered.
you're expert in the ergot
And the
poisoning.
fungus.
Yes. So it was found in rye, wheat, and other cereals, which toxicologists say cause symptoms such as delusions, vomiting, and muscle spasms.
So that would make them flap like a bird, and that would...
So I think it was something simple like that, and then, the little witching thing happened over wherever, and then people started pointing fingers.
Right, so when then they didn't have medicines for anything, so if they were to feed them something randomly, they would start doing these things, and that would cause random spasms, and they'd be like, witch.
Was the fungus being, eaten in food on accident, or were these kids getting high off of it?
They're like
Ooh,
shrooms.
that's a good idea.
Well,
Here
they
you
were
go.
saying that it was younger kids, so I think somehow
It could
that
have
was
probably
their
been a
drugs
mixture,
for back
like-
then.
because a
They
lot...
were like, whoop.
Rye.
Right.
Well, see, and a lot of people don't believe that that's what caused it. But, I mean, that's a good point. You know, it could have been, trippy for them, and that's why they're doing all these
Had
crazy
to start
things.
somewhere.
It could have been just the greed. Old feuds, your neighbor, you want their land, like you were saying.
It's an easy scapegoat. You're
Yeah.
a witch.
Yeah,
Get out.
or if you just don't like the person, you're just like, hey, Evan, you're a witch. I saw you in my dream, pinching me. I'm going to make you pee in a cake.
I saw you poke your mole.
Pretty much was an evil person towards you, or who you didn't like. You could easily point the finger and say witch, and they would be dead. I mean, that's just it. They would.
Toby never took his pants off for me,
Yeah.
so he's a witch.
Didn't give me his land. He didn't give me that 1,000 pounds of cotton. So you're a witch.
That's what we call it now?
1,000 pounds of cotton.
Uh-huh. That's right.
Sucking butt.
Okay.
You didn't suck my butt today. You're a witch.
I wish.
This is what I believe. This one's my belief right here, that all of this happened to bring more faith to the religion in the town. Because if you can get everyone riled up and have them all like band together and be scared of this evil, then the church is going to be stronger. Mm-hmm. So that's what I believe it was.
It's an easy way to get a group together.
I mean, I feel like it's pretty much all of it, though. I mean, I guess it really could be a little bit of everything sprinkled together. But I think it started with trying to make the church stronger, and then that's when it was like, hey, you son of a you're a witch. In January of 1967, the Massachusetts General Court declared a day of fasting in honor of the innocent lives that were taken because of the mass hysteria during that time.
The day of fasting was put there because they were trying to sit there and make up for all the lost lives they caused to be lost.
They felt guilty.
They felt guilty, and there was a lot of lives that were gone because of that.
They did not issue an official apology, though, until 1957. So it took like 200-300 years to get an apology out of them. They also finally built a memorial honoring the victims of the witch trials in Salem in 1992.
Mm-hmm. I've actually visited Salem, Massachusetts, and it's a fascinating town, but it's, from what I witnessed, is divided between people who are like, oh, witch trials are nothing. No, we're a close-knit, town. We're a wonderful town. Don't worry about the history. That's the past, no big deal. And then there's another half of the town that embraces it, and they're like, witch everything, witch hunt. Here's, we're haunted because of this. You can see apparitions. And so the town, to me, it may not be the case, living there, but to me it seemed very divided between people who are like embracing the history of the witch trials and really enjoyed it, and the people who wanted to forget it and pretend like it was never there.
Right.
But it was an amazing town whenever I went. They have the witch museum. They have like a whole that big memorial. It's like a big park. They have something set up for Gallows Hill, for where most of the hangings supposedly took place. It's a really fun town. So I enjoyed it.
Did they have like one tree like where they hung everyone? Like it was just like the go-to spot to hang everyone?
That's what they say. They carried all the witches by cart. They were like bound. They took them by cart to this one tree on Gallows Hill and hung them, which they, believed was this one spot called Gallows Hill, and the family members were allowed to take the bodies once they had perished, usually by waterway.
And that's when they burned them. They would burn them because they would sit there.
They would either burn them or let
the evil was let out,
or let the family take them by waterway. So some historians went to the Gallows Hill that Salem had proclaimed as Gallows Hill, and they were like, there's no way that this could be Gallows Hill. There's no body of water passing through. They went around, digging through all these different papers through the courts and censuses, and found that the actual Gallows Hill is behind some Walgreens in Salem. Yeah, and they think they found the actual tree, too.
I think it's the perfect setup. It's got like a spot where there's like a little canal or something back there.
The waterway where families could take the bodies, or the waterway where they could take the bodies, and the perfect hill where a cart could actually go up it. Because the place where Salem says is Gallows Hill now, the hill is too large for a cart to
travel up,
travel up it. So,
but they believe that it's behind a Walgreens or something.
In between a Walgreens and somebody's house. They have no idea.
Bonus round.
So, bonus round trivia. Do you know what the theory is on why witches could fly?
I don't know.
I'm waiting for this.
None of y'all read this?
No.
Okay.
He told me on the way here, and he was like, do you want to hear it or not? And I was like, no, I don't want to hear it. Let's wait for it. So this is going to be good.
So they believe that witches, the reason they believe that witches fly is that when witches would go out into the woods, supposed witches, would go out into the woods and meet up, and, they would worship the devil or whatever they were doing. They would have these big cauldrons, and this is where the cauldrons come in, and this is where the broomsticks come in. Okay? They'd have these big cauldrons, and they would mix whatever it is they're mixing. they believed that there was hallucinogens in this mix, right? Well, what they would do is they would ingest it, and they would also put it on the broom, okay? And I'm assuming they weren't wearing pants or underpants.
Unterwäsche.
And when they would put this on the brooms and they would tuck it up in between their legs on their hoo-hoo,
Yes.
it would make them trip balls to where they thought they were flying.
So they weren't even really flying?
No, that's just what they
Their
speculate.
coochies are just getting high.
Well, you gotta think it's being ingested into the body, and I don't know if they were drinking it also, or if it was just something on the skin, but
That's so funny.
so basically, these witches were
What a
getting
disappointment.
these witches were getting high as a kite and thinking that they were getting high as a witch on a broom.
So, what did it say? Why they put it on a broom? Of all things?
I mean,
They were high.
they were high. I mean,
Let's take a broom into the woods, rub some stuff on it, and go to town.
put it on our junk.
That's so funny.
So that's the bonus round.
Bonus round.
My theory is because the Puritans were so, godly, it's difficult to do, evil things to people without having a good excuse. So
Because it would be against God. Because
exactly. So it gave them some sort of control to be able to control others and do evilness in the name of their God.
until it got pushed too far, maybe
Yeah.
when they just were killing people.
Yeah. Just like, witch.
Yeah, 'cause, there was
There's
quite
no
a few people accused of it.
No trial anymore.
Evan, what is your theory on witches?
I don't
First
know.
off, do y'all think that they're real? Witches in general, like not maybe
Yes.
during the Salem Witch Trial. Do you think people have magic? People have black magic, white magic.
Oh, I hope, but I mean,
I hope.
I wish. No,
My name is Kristen Morgan. Please use me in one of your spells of getting rich.
I mean, like I don't necessarily want to be pinched in my sleep.
For all your witches out
That
there.
would piss me off.
You
but
don't want an evil witch. You want the good witch.
Yeah, I just like the idea of somebody
Glinda.
having
Glinda.
some crazy magical powers and Harry Potter. I mean, Harry Potter. There you go.
What is it? Expectro Patrotum.
Exactly. Show me a magical deer in the woods.
So what do you think, Ev?
I think it was a mixture of a lot of things. Bored teenagers, and they found out how to use rye and stuff and get high, and they did some crazy shit. And then it was a very religious town, and they started pointing fingers and wanted people out on the gallows.
Do you think that maybe these teenagers were like that they would get high, and maybe they thought they were going to get in trouble, and they're like, "Oh nope, you're a witch." I mean, like blame it on someone very quickly to that way they can be like, "Okay, now let's do some more rye, bros."
We'll
Yeah,
have
maybe
some
they're
more of that
Trying
rye.
to take the blame off themselves or something.
Right, yeah, like try to. That way they can be like, "Hey, now that we blamed it on Kristen and she's the witch, where's that rye at,
Where's
bro?"
that rye?
I am a witch.
So what do you think? Oh, do you think witches are real, Evan?
I do. I think witches are real.
Really?
Yeah. Do you?
I don't think so.
You know?
No, I'd rather believe in a wizard than a witch.
Maybe
A
maybe not
wizard?
like
Well,
riding on broomsticks
too
type
much
of
cock.
witches, but there's I think there's real witches.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what they do. I'm not a witch, but
I know
I
there's
think
people
there's-
that practice
they practice-
Wicca.
Well, yeah, and
Yeah.
Wicca is its own whole. We could do a whole show on Wicca by
let's do
itself.
it.
I mean, you can call yourself a witch, but if you can't hallucinate your coochie on a broomstick,
What do you think, Kristen?
Uh,
What's the theory that you think answers the Salem Witch Trial stuff?
I believe that witches are not so much real as much as they try to make themselves be. I believe that, like in the Salem witchcraft era, that they were pretty much bored, and there's a lot of things that are unspoken for, like the skin conditions or anything else that could have been nowadays we're like, oh, we'll go to a certain doctor for this, where they didn't have those luxuries back then. But now I believe there's a lot of people out there that are black magic, white magic, or Wiccan, or Wicca, and they are considering themselves as someone who can control things. I believe that anybody can control a lot of things as long as they believe it, but not so much through power as what they believe in witchcraft.
They can't make stuff float.
Right. No. I've never seen that, and unless I see that, I'm not going to believe it.
The Matrix.
Well, okay, what about this? I will only believe that witches existed because they didn't have doctors and science back then. So you would probably go to your witch doctor type person because they're the ones that are going to be making the spells, which would be medicine, what we would think of as medicine. So I could see people confusing a half-assed doctor as a witch, because, oh my gosh, you created this liquid and now I feel better and my stomach doesn't hurt, or so I could see confusion with a witch and a early stages of a doctor.
I will say this: if someone can believe in witchcraft, then they should be able to believe in prayer, because it's about the same in my book.
Witchcraft and prayer are the same?
Yes. Yes. If you can sit there and it's the same thing. If you can think that you can manipulate the world between a spell, or you can pray to someone, then it's about the same thing.
I guess so, now that you say it like that, because I wasn't sure where you're going with it.
Yeah, because if you can sit there and say, hey, I sit there and I had the spell and say that you want somebody to love you so much, well, it's about the same as saying, hey, I pray to my, God to do this and that. I mean,
I can put a spell on you and
if prayer works, witchcraft works in my book. That's the way I feel.
I think I see where you're going with it, but for me, it would be more like witchcraft, I control you, religion, a higher power controls.
Right, but the way I see it, though, is if someone else has witchcraft in their hands, or if there are people out there with witchcraft in their hands, they could do so much with it, and that they could cause so much damage with it, that they would build it, and they would cause a really bad thing. Like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He's like, party foul.
He's so mad.
He's so mad.
We were at the playoffs, and they had towels, one for each person. A lot of people were drunk and left them. He walked around after the game was over for an hour, picking them up off the floor.
We lost our keys at the game because Tina was drunk.
No, because Evan was, and decided to look for towels instead of the keys. He was picking towels up off the ground, off the nasty, nasty ground.
They were round 1, game 3, Dallas Stars towels. They were only made once.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. Okay. This is my final statement. I believe the best thing that came out of Salem and the witches and just witches in general was the classic movie Hocus Pocus and the song I Put a Spell on You.
So
Fact.
good.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
So good. Yes.
So that's the best thing that came out of witches, whether they're real or not, and it's a good song. Agreed? Agreed?
Yes.
Agreed.
I love Hocus Pocus.
Okay, so stick around and listen to two of the littlest podcasters ever. They are going to explain for us witches, and it might be kind of a bumpy kids explain everything.
Kids explain everything.
What's your name?
I'm Gibson Gage Morgan.
How old are you, Gibson?
5.
5. How old are you? What's your name?
Dayton, I'm 6.
You're 6? Today, we're going to talk about witches. What do you know about witches?
Witches fly.
They fly?
Yeah.
What do witches
Do
What do you know about witches?
that they have a broom? No, those things on their noses.
A wart?
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah.
And then the witch do this.
So, what did you say? What do witches ride on?
A broom?
A broom?
Yeah.
What do witches do?
They take black cats.
They take black cats? What do they do with the black cats?
They make them as a helper and they make them make sandwiches.
Their cats make sandwiches for them? What do you think witches do?
Ew, he's picking his nose.
I don't know.
Stop picking your nose. What do witches do?
I don't know. What does it do?
Hold on.
I don't know what to do.
You don't know what witches do?
No.
Oh, I believe it.
Let's see. What color are witches?
Black.
Black?
Yeah.
Green?
Yeah.
Do they wear any kind of hats or anything?
Black hats.
Yeah.
Pointy.
What? They're what?
They're pointy.
Are they pointy?
Like this.
Yeah.
What do they sound like? Gib, what do they sound like?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, do they know any like tricks or anything?
No.
They don't.
Well, yeah, they do. With their brooms, they know how to control them.
Do they fly on them, right?
Yeah.
What about spells? Do they cast any spells on anyone
Yeah, to make frogs, probably.
to make frogs? Do they turn people into frogs?
Yeah.
Ooh. Are witches scary?
Kinda.
Are they scary?
No, it's not creepy to me.
They're not creepy to you?
Yeah.
They kinda. That's what.
Do you have to fight witches?
No.
Yeah.
Oh yeah?
What?
Yeah.
Huh?
What about in the Wizard of Oz? How do they get rid of the witch?
Turn them down
They turn them down for
Yeah.
what?
like this.
Torn down for what?
Like this.
But how do they do it?
Torn
Do
down
they-
for what?
Do they put something on them?
Yeah.
What do they put on them?
I don't know.
Water?
A diaper.
Yeah.
Is it water?
Yeah. Water. That water turn the witch down like this. And its head down.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they have black cats, they ride brooms, and water is how you kill them.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys want to say bye?
Bye. Bye.
Bye, boy.
Bye, dude. Bye. Kids are playing everything.
We thank you for listening to our show. If you have any questions about anything, please send us an email at secrettransmissions@hotmail.com.
Or you can follow us on Twitter and find out when we post our new shows at Secret Trans Pod. That's at SecretTranspod.
Don't forget all of our episodes are also available on YouTube. Just search for Secret Transmission Podcast and subscribe. Or you can just listen to us on SoundCloud.
Please come back and listen to us try to explain the unexplainable.
Mr. Pop. Eat.